My friends, tonight I want to talk to you about a moment that shook our nation, a moment that forced us to pause, to reflect, and to ask ourselves what kind of future we are building together. Trump's move did not just make headlines, it rattled the very foundation of how we see ourselves as a country. Some people were outraged, some were confused, and many were left stunned. But here's the truth: moments like these, as difficult as they may be, are not the end of our story, they are a test of it. When that move was made, it felt as if the air had been pulled from the room. People across the nation paused, almost in disbelief, trying to process what had just happened. Some shouted in anger, others whispered in confusion, and many simply sat in silence, unable to find the words to match the weight of the moment. Because it was not just a political decision, not just a headline flashing across a television screen. It was something far deeper. It was a strike at the expectations people had, at the sense of stability they believed in. For decades, Americans have believed, even when they disagreed with one another, that certain lines would not be crossed, certain norms would not be broken. And yet, in one swift move, those assumptions were shattered. In neighborhoods from small towns to big cities, conversations sparked, some filled with outrage, some with disbelief. Parents found themselves struggling to explain to their children why things suddenly felt uncertain. Workers in offices, students on campuses, elders sitting at kitchen tables, they all carried the same questions. What does this mean? What comes next? That's what shock does. It creates silence, then it creates questions, and those questions reveal the fear beneath. But the move did not only shock because of what it was, but because of what it suggested about the road ahead. Was this a sign of more to come? Was this a turning point we could not reverse? And in that moment of shock, we realized how fragile trust can be. Every nation, at some point in its journey, encounters moments that feel like earthquakes beneath its feet. These are not ordinary disagreements or routine political shifts. They are moments that force people to look in the mirror and ask who they really are, what they really stand for, and whether the principles they've long claimed to uphold can endure under pressure. This shocking move was one of those moments. It was a test, not of our comfort or our convenience, but of our character, because character is not proven when things are easy, when the road is smooth, or when everyone is in agreement. Character is revealed in the storm, in the crisis, in the hour when the very fabric of a nation is stretched thin. In this moment of shock, we learned something about ourselves. We learned how quickly fear can rise, how easily frustration can grow, and how deeply people hunger for stability when it feels like the ground is shifting. We saw neighbors questioning one another, communities debating in hushed tones or fiery arguments, and citizens wrestling with what kind of country they wanted to live in. That is the test, not whether one decision can knock us down, but whether we have the courage to rise, whether we have the wisdom to learn, whether we have the strength to stand together even when shaken. When decisions are made at the highest levels of leadership, they are never isolated. They may be signed in an office behind closed doors. They may be announced at a podium with cameras flashing, but their reach is far beyond those walls. They seep into living rooms, into workplaces, into classrooms, into the very rhythm of everyday life. This shocking move reminded us of that truth in the clearest, most unsettling way. It was not just a matter of politics, it was a matter of people. It shaped how families talked around the dinner table. It altered how communities looked at their future. It sent ripples through the economy, through trust in institutions, through the quiet hopes of those who simply wanted stability and fairness in their lives. Think of the parent working long hours who suddenly wonders how this decision will affect their children's education or their health care. Think of the small business owner who has already been fighting to stay afloat, now staring at uncertainty about regulations or opportunities. Think of the student who is watching the news, trying to make sense of a world that feels less predictable, and questioning whether their dreams still have room to grow. This is the weight of leadership. Every choice carries consequences that extend far beyond the headline, into the hearts and lives of millions. The truth has always been simple, yet powerful. No single man, no single woman, no single leader has ever held the true power of this nation in their hands. That power has always lived in the people. It has always lived in the countless voices that rise when injustice appears, in the steady determination of communities that refuse to be silenced, in the courage of ordinary men and women who dare to demand something better. This shocking move was a reminder of that truth. For a moment, it might have felt as though the fate of the country had been hijacked by one decision, by one person's hand. But history shows us again and again that while a leader can shape the moment, it is the people who shape the future. You see, when citizens decide to stand together, they create a force stronger than any decree, stronger than any speech, stronger than any act of division. It was people, not leaders alone, who fought for civil rights, who marched for equality, who organized for fair wages, who demanded justice when it seemed impossible. Leaders may have signed the documents, but the pressure, the spirit, the fire came from the people. That is where democracy breathes, not in the silence of a chamber, not in the pages of a law book, but in the hearts of millions who know their voice matters. Shock, by its very nature, has a way of freezing people. It stuns the mind. It stills the body. It makes us feel as though we are caught in place, powerless to move forward. That was the first reaction of many when this move was made, a wave of silence, of disbelief, of paralysis. But history has shown us that shock is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the spark that can either extinguish our will or ignite it into something far greater. The real question is not whether we are stunned, that much is certain, but whether we choose to remain stunned or to transform that moment into energy, into purpose, into action. Think about the moments in our past when people were shaken, when they felt blindsided by injustice or tragedy. There were those who curled inward, paralyzed by fear. But then there were others, men and women, young and old, who refused to be defined by the shock. They turned their outrage into protest. They turned their questions into organizing. They turned their pain into courage. And because of them, the world shifted. Because of them, the seemingly immovable was moved. That is what must happen when a nation is shaken, not paralysis, but determination. The future of this nation has never rested on the shoulders of one individual, no matter how powerful their position may seem. The destiny of America has always been written in the collective actions of its people. Every chapter of our history has been shaped not by the shock of a single decision, but by the determination of millions who refused to surrender their hope. That is why even now, in the wake of a move that left the nation stunned, the pen is still in our hands. The story is still ours to write. This is why we cannot allow ourselves to believe that one move, no matter how shocking, has sealed our fate, because fate is not fixed. It is forged day by day by the choices we make together. It is forged when people decide to step into the arena rather than sit on the sidelines. It is forged when communities decide to bridge divides rather than deepen them. It is forged when hope is chosen over despair and action over resignation. Each of these choices becomes a sentence, a paragraph, a page in the unfolding story of who we are. And so, my friends, here we stand, shaken, yes, but not broken. We have walked through the storm of shock, and we have faced the weight of uncertainty. Yet, if history has taught us anything, it is that America's strength has never been measured by the moves of a single man, but by the movement of its people. This moment may have left us stunned, but let it also awaken us. Let it remind us that our voices still matter, our choices still shape tomorrow, and our unity still has the power to bend the arc of history toward justice. We cannot undo what has been done, but we can decide what comes next. So let us rise not with fear, but with determination. Let us speak not with anger alone, but with the conviction that truth still matters. Let us act not as strangers divided by lines and labels, but as one people bound by a shared destiny. Because the story of this nation is still being written, and the next chapter belongs to us. The move may have shocked the nation, but it will not define us. What will define us is how we respond, with courage, with hope, and with the unshakable belief that together there is no storm we cannot overcome.